Stakeknife was himself involved in very serious and wholly unjustifiable criminality whilst operating as an agent, including murders.
Codenamed Stakeknife, he was the most successful spy to ever infiltrate the Irish Republican Army during the infamous Troubles period, being referred to as the Golden Egg by British military intelligence. His real identity only came out back in 2018, so now we know who the man is, and this is his story. Freddie Scappaticci, the man later known as Stakeknife, was born in January 12, 1946, in Belfast, Northern Ireland, into a city simmering with tension and poised on the brink of prolonged conflict. His family, Italian immigrants, settled in a working-class neighborhood that was soon to be engulfed by the political and separatist conflict that characterized the era known as the Troubles.
Well, I suppose 5 is quite large in these circumstances.
The Troubles were a violent conflict from the late 1960s to 1998, rooted in the constitutional status of Northern Ireland. The conflict primarily involved two opposing groups: the Unionists and Loyalists, who were predominantly Protestant and wanted Northern Ireland to remain part of the United Kingdom, and the Nationalists and Republicans, mostly Catholic, who sought unification with the Republic of Ireland. This period saw widespread violence, bombings, shootings and brutal reprisals, affecting the daily lives of all Northern Irish citizens. Belfast, the capital city and hence epicenter of much of the conflict, was a divided city. Walls, known as peace lines, were erected to separate Protestant and Catholic neighborhoods, but these physical barriers did little to prevent the violence. Tensions were high, with frequent riots, paramilitary activity, and an atmosphere of fear and mistrust. Growing up in such an environment, young Freddie would have been acutely aware of this divide and the political struggles shaping his homeland. The social fabric was torn by the conflict, with families and communities often split along political and religious lines. Economic hardship was prevalent, and opportunities for young people were limited. The constant threat of violence meant that survival often depended on aligning oneself with one of the dominant factions, driving him towards the IRA as a means of asserting identity and finding purpose amid the chaos. After school, Scappaticci took up work as a bricklayer. He was then fined for riotous assembly in 1970 after being caught up in the Troubles. A year later, he was once again arrested and held without trial in Long Kesh at the age of 25 as part of Operation Demetrius, a controversial operation that involved the arrests of 342 people with alleged links to the IRA. Among those interned with him were figures later to become prominent in the Republican movement, such as Ivor Bell, Gerry Adams, and Alex Maskey. On his release, he found work on a building site, where he was later questioned by the police over a tax scam he was accused of participating in. The exact moment that led Freddie Scappaticci to join the Provisional Irish Republican Army, or IRA for short, is not well documented, but like many young men of his generation, his decision was likely driven by a combination of personal experience and the broader environment. Growing up in Belfast during the 1960s and early 1970s, Scappaticci witnessed firsthand the injustices and violence perpetrated against the Catholic community. The civil rights marches, followed by brutal crackdowns by the police force and the British Army, radicalized many young Catholics. In early 1969, spurred by the escalating conflict and a desire to fight for his community, Scappaticci joined the Provisional IRA at its birth. The Provisional IRA was committed to ending British rule in Northern Ireland and achieving the reunification of Ireland. This was a period marked by intense recruitment and mobilization within nationalist areas, and Scapatici's decision was a reflection of the broader movement among young men in his community to take up arms. Scapatici, now known as Scap by associates, had a commitment and toughness that quickly earned him a reputation within the IRA. He demonstrated a formidable resolve and loyalty to the cause. His ability to handle pressure and his effectiveness in operations saw him rise steadily through the IRA's hierarchy. By the late 1970s, Scapatici had established himself as a significant figure within the organization. In 1978, after around 6 years of active service in the IRA, Scapatici was recruited by the Royal Ulster Constabulary Special Branch, agencies established to obtain information on militant organizations in Northern Ireland by recruiting and running agents and informants. Naturally, they had links to MI5 as well. But I must say, the FRU was truly something else. At its outset, the FRU had 170 personnel, 80 of them officers. Many were hand-picked from regiments throughout the British Army and trained by the SAS, the most elite special forces unit in the entire British military. The FRU didn't appear on any of the usual Ministry of Defence directories. For a little more than a decade, it was the British Army's most secret unit. Now, the circumstances of his recruitment remain somewhat unresolved, given there's two main versions of what happened. For the longest time, it was believed that Scapatici decided to approach the British after he was badly beaten by a rival in the IRA. So his motive was revenge. But according to General John Wilsey, who had served during the prime years of the Troubles, it couldn't have been further from what happened. In his book, The Ulster Tales, he explained that the recruitment derived from a pub friendship that a young army sergeant named Peter Jones had struck up sometime after 1976, when his regiment was posted to North Belfast. Peter knew Belfast well. He met his wife there and made friends outside military circles, getting to know the culture and the language. So when the Troubles broke out, he was stationed there as a military intelligence officer. On his own initiative, he set out to try to identify possible sources and visited bars and drinking clubs where it was known that Republicans socialized. He had no problem fitting in, being a chatty person. He liked the Irish. His wife was a local, after all. One such night, he met Scapatici, and slowly their relationship brewed over late nights at the pub. Apparently, Scapatici was unsympathetic to the aims and methods of the IRA, quite possibly even the violence of it. This actually wasn't really surprising, as loose groups like the IRA were known to be factional and riddled with dissent. So from this opportunity, the young sergeant was slowly able to recruit him to work for the British. He had struck gold. This marked the beginning of his double life as Stakeknife, one of the most highly placed spies within the IRA. By the 1980s, Scapatici had become a lead member of the IRA's Internal Security Unit, also known as the Nutting Squad. This unit was responsible for identifying and dealing with informers within the IRA, a role that placed him in a uniquely dangerous position given his secret allegiance to British intelligence. His work involved interrogating suspected informers, often leading to their execution. A grim irony given his own status as a double agent. Freddie Scapatici had to navigate a highly dangerous and complex web to pass intelligence to the British Army. His primary handlers were officers from the Force Research Unit, or FRU for short. Scapatici's main handler was believed to be a man known by the pseudonym Martin Ingram, later revealed to be Ian Hurst, although multiple handlers were involved over the years to ensure the flow of information remained uninterrupted and secure. Stakeknife was so important that MI5 set up an entire office dedicated solely to him. He was given his own dedicated handlers and agents, and rumours even suggested that he was being paid at least £80,000 a year or $100,000, and had a bank account in Gibraltar. Just to illustrate his importance even more, the FRU was already the most secret unit in the British Army, and yet the project that became Stakeknife was even more secretive, that it was kept separate even from the rest of the FRU and staffed by a dedicated group of soldiers on a downstairs floor known to some as the Rat Hole. It's been also alleged that Stakeknife's intelligence handlers allowed up to 40 people to be killed by the IRA's internal security unit to protect his cover. Communication was conducted through a series of clandestine meetings, dead drops, and encrypted messages, meticulously orchestrated to avoid detection by the IRA. The FRU used advanced tradecraft techniques, including secure radio communications, encrypted messages, and pre-arranged signal systems to coordinate with Scappaticci. Martin Ingram, Stakeknife's former handler-turned-whistleblower, alleged that information passed on by Scappaticci contributed to a series of British military successes at the time. Scappaticci was influential in identifying kidnappers associated with the kidnapping of Irish supermarket magnate Ben Dunn in 1981. Another supermarket boss, Don Tidy, was kidnapped from his home in 1983. Scappaticci apparently tipped off the FRU to the details of the kidnapping, which resulted in the killings of a trainee police officer, Gary Sheehan, and Irish Army soldier, Private Patrick Kelly. But perhaps the most significant operation involving intelligence provided by Scappaticci was the ambush at Loughgall on May 8, 1987. The IRA planned to attack the Royal Ulster Constabulary Station in Loughgall, County Armagh. The operation was meticulously planned by the IRA, involving a heavily armed unit of 8 men. However, unbeknownst to the IRA, Scappaticci had obtained detailed information about the operation and passed it on to his handlers in the FRU. The British Army and the RUC set up an ambush, positioning an elite Special Air Service unit at the station. As the IRA unit launched their attack, planting a bomb and opening fire on the station, the SAS soldiers sprang their trap. All 8 IRA members were killed in the ensuing firefight. The Loughgall ambush was a devastating blow to the IRA, eliminating some of its most experienced and committed members. The operation also demonstrated the lethal efficiency of British intelligence and military coordination, significantly weakening the IRA's operational capabilities. The aftermath of the ambush led to a period of intense scrutiny and suspicion within the IRA, as they tried to uncover the source of the leak that had led to such a catastrophic loss. Despite all his work as an undercover operative for the British Army, Stakeknife's reputation is incredibly controversial. He was so deeply embedded within the inner circles of the IRA that he undoubtedly committed dozens of crimes in his role within the organization. He alone was linked to 14 killings and 15 abductions. Not only that, but several people were either killed or allowed to die in order to maintain his cover. This includes the killing of IRA members by the IRA who were in a position to blow Scappaticci's cover, as well as the British Army not acting on information in fear of their prized asset being revealed. In 1993, Freddie Scappaticci reached out to the ITV program The Cook Report and consented to an interview about his involvement in the IRA. This first interview was conducted on August 26, 1993, in the car park of the Culloden Hotel in Cultra, County Down. Unbeknownst to Scappaticci, the interview was secretly recorded and was set to air on TV. But when the police and intelligence services found out about the covertly recorded interview, they swore the reporters to secrecy, admitting that he was a very, very important informant whose life would be at risk. The tape wasn't aired for another 10 years, But when it did finally air in 2003, allegations emerged of Scappaticci being Stakeknife, the high-level double agent. Of course, he denied this, but immediately had to leave Northern Ireland, where his life was now at stake, and went into hiding in England. During the interview, Scappaticci disclosed information about the IRA's Northern Command operations, discussed his own involvement with the organization, and claimed that Martin McGuinness, ex-leader within the IRA and former Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, had a role in the death of Frank Hegarty. Hegarty, an IRA member, had been killed in 1986 after being exposed as an informer. Scappaticci allegedly had intricate knowledge of Hegarty's death because he was involved in the interrogation and execution process. Hegarty had provided information about a significant Libyan arms cache discovered by the police. Scappaticci's circumstances began to unravel when Sir John Stevens, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, indicated awareness of his existence. Stevens was initially conducting an investigation into collusion between British security forces and loyalist paramilitaries, focusing on the 1987 killing of Protestant student Brian Adam Lambert and the 1989 murder of solicitor Pat Finucane. In April 2004, Stevens announced his intention to question Scappaticci as part of the third Stevens inquiry.
Can be up at the entrance and meet you, and they know who I am.
February 2007, the Belfast newsletter reported on a cassette recording allegedly featuring Scappaticci discussing his involvement in numerous murders. This recording was handed over to the Police Service of Northern Ireland in 2004 and transferred to the Stevens inquiry in 2005.
Take yourself off. All that stuff on the TV and everything else about us.
Scappaticci always denied his role as an informer, and the Provisional IRA also publicly stated that they didn't believe that he was working with the British military, which may prove just how good of a double agent he really was. Stakeknife was arrested but always released, before finally dying from a stroke in April 2023, without ever being put on trial for his apparent crimes throughout the Troubles. Determining the truth about Freddie Scappaticci remains an enduring challenge due to the intense secrecy surrounding his alleged role as a double agent within the IRA. Despite various allegations and investigations spanning decades, including his suspected involvement in numerous crimes and his intricate espionage activities, Scappaticci's true identity and the extent of his actions have never been officially confirmed or publicly acknowledged. The layers of secrecy surrounding his role as Stakeknife have perpetuated ambiguity and speculation, complicating efforts to establish a definitive account of his activities and the impact they had on both sides of the conflict in Northern Ireland. Thanks for watching.